A lot of people seem to be really frustrated with the current state of the dating landscape, which for, fair reasons, there seems to be a lot of people struggling more to find someone these days, and that overall it just seems like dating is more difficult today than it has been in recent history anyway. And I think there's a couple of things going on that are really worthy of attention, and this is more on a societal level. The first thing you guys have probably heard about, which is that women over the past couple of decades, maybe a little bit more, have been getting more and more educated. We've been getting, wealthier when we're single. We've been earning more. And as that trend is going up for women, the reverse is happening for men. And the issue for both sexes with this is not that it's a bad thing that women are earning more and getting more educated. That's certainly, probably an inherently good thing for capable people to be able to reach for their dreams. The issue comes in, though, with dating when women, which is just kind of naturally the case, we date across and up in a success hierarchy, so to speak. So we want men who are just as educated or making just as much money or just as competent as we are or more than us. And men do the opposite. They date across or down the success hierarchy, typically. This isn't the case for everyone, but on a macro level, if more and more women are getting more competent and the opposite is happening for men, there's a shrinking number of men who are wanted by a increasing size population of women. And that, just numerically speaking, means that a lot of people either end up single, the women in particular, or we end up settling. And that's incredibly frustrating for a lot of people to think about that possibility. The second thing that I think is not talked about as much is this attitude towards physical intimacy that we've seen really evolve a lot and change a lot since before the 1960s, but I think the 60s were a big turn in, with the sexual liberation movement really starting to take off. And because over the past 80 plus years, we as women have made access to physical intimacy with us easier a lot of the times, that we've lowered our standards from, say, marriage. A lot of us are no longer requiring men to marry us before we'll sleep with them. But because of that, we are making it easier for men to get what they want, but men have not necessarily dropped their standards for relationships. So whereas women are what a lot of people call the gatekeepers of sex, men are the gatekeepers of relationships, generally speaking, which just means that men are wanting to be physically intimate with women, but women are the ones typically who will say yes or no. And then for relationships, the opposite is true. But because our requirements for allowing someone to sleep with us are now lower than they used to be, but men's relationship standards are still where they used to be, we're seeing again this clash in differences in standards between the two sexes today in ways that we haven't really much in the past. And so it's a difference in earnings and education and overall professional competence between men and women that's happening, that's making this harder. But it's also a difference in our requirements to get into any sort of relationship with each other. Whatever your views are on sexual morality, this video is not about that. It's not about my opinions or anyone's opinions on when it's right to have sex with somebody that you're seeing, but there is definitely something to be said about a balance of bargaining power between the sexes. And when we see extreme imbalances in bargaining power and in general competence between the sexes, moving in the opposite directions of what hypergamy, for example, would support, that makes dating a really tough situation for every single person. So at this point, you might be saying to yourself, yeah, I get that we're having these problems in dating, pretty obvious, but what do we do about it? And I've been trying to search around the internet for people talking about this specific solution that I had in mind, and I've been struggling to find it. But if you find anyone talking about it, let me know. I'd be really curious to listen to that. But I think that a potential really good solution that wouldn't necessarily work for everyone, but I think it could work for a lot of people, is focusing on getting married younger. And the reason that I say this is that I think it would address both of these issues pretty well. And so, on the one hand, I think it would really help with the issue of women getting more successful and men getting less successful, and that being very difficult to find good pairs, according to women wanting to date people who are more successful than them, and men wanting the opposite typically. Because when you're younger, everyone's on a more level playing field. So you haven't had this time to build up, your social reputation, your financial resources, your professional prowess, that everybody's relatively the same. For example, in college, that the college you go to, you're very similar in your proven competence as the people you go to school with, more so at least than people in their early 30s, for example, where you had, a decade plus to create a really illustrious career. So I think that would help people, if they're focusing on marriage at a younger age, have more people in their general ballpark. And obviously you have to really commit to your wedding vows, take them super seriously, and do everything in your power to stay together over a lifetime, because as spouses rise above or fall below each other's expectations for how successful they'll be throughout their lifespan, that can lead to marital discord and divorce if it's too heavily emphasized in marriage later. So if you get the marital vows right and really take them seriously, getting married younger can mean that you have a wider dating pool of people who are in a better position relative to you in the success hierarchy. In addition to that, younger people typically have less sexual experience, so women have a greater chance at bargaining power because they haven't necessarily reached a point where they're giving their physical intimacy away as much yet, and men haven't had the chance to be physically intimate with as many women yet. And so if we are saying, no, I want to get married young, I'm not going to just let people sleep with me for less than real commitment, then women can regain that bargaining power that I think we lost over the past several decades. But what do you guys think about this? I'd love to read your thoughts if you have any and want to leave a comment specifically about these two topics, kind of the idea of hypergamy and it becoming more and more difficult for women to date across and up a success hierarchy because women are becoming more successful, but then also the imbalance of bargaining power that we're seeing since the sexual liberation movement has really seemed to permeate through the whole society, but men have not necessarily changed their standards for getting into a relationship in the same way.